This legislation is discriminatory, it's racist. It shouldn't have proceeded.
What this government is doing is wrong and it is evil.
There's a general feeling across Māoridom, unless we move now as a people, there's going to be no real change.
20 years ago, as a 10-year-old boy myself, my whānau, some of my kura mates and thousands of others marched this very street in one of the biggest protest movements in history, the Foreshore and Seabed Hīkoi. As a boy, I had no idea what we were marching about or why we were marching in the first place. But I could feel a wairua, a sense of injustice, anger, frustration and sadness. 2 decades on, I want to retrace the steps taken on the Hīkoi to understand the why, and to understand the importance of the Hīkoi in our history.
I think it's about raw, venal, selfish politics.
But what it is the same old faces, the Ken Mears, the Harawira families, the Annette Sykes, the haters and wreckers.
It's about time we started looking to a new future. We have to look to people like Tariana, who have the courage to say to these people in here, you can't push me around, I have my people behind me.
When my ancestors arrived in Aotearoa from the sea, out of the sea, they found more than land. They found a home, a sanctuary. They developed a special connection to this whenua, and just as importantly, the foreshore and seabed.
It's our spiritual sustenance, no different to our whenua around the motu, around Aotearoa. Our wairuatanga, our spiritual sustenance in regard to us as a people. It brings about our physical sustenance as well. Kai moana, all those wonderful taonga that our tupuna left behind for us to protect, defend, and look after into the future.
Ka tirohia e ngā manene me ngā kaitāmi, ka warawara ki te whenua. Nā reira ka noho tonu te takutai moana ki a tātou. O te hononga, e kore nei e motu. Kāore he pire kāwana e whakahē mai ana. Ia ngai Māori te mana o te takutai moana.
Customary rights have never been extinguished. And I think that's an important point. It's never been extinguished, it's ours, and therefore we have the right to use that.
I te tau 2003, ka hiahia ngā tiapa me tahi atu I te wai pounamu, e whakatū pakihi ki ngā moana o tō rātou takiwā. Ka whakahengia tā rātou tono a mea rawa ake, ka hari atu te take, te kōti pīra.
The decision of the Court of Appeal was very simple. It didn't say that Māori specifically owned the foreshore and seabed. It simply said that the Māori Land Court had jurisdiction to determine whether or not the foreshore and seabed of the Marlborough Sounds was Māori customary land.
What the court did was it made an order which basically said, yes, the Māori Land Court is a vehicle for you, and the Māori Land Court can recognise your customary title to your takutai. And what the government saw from Ngāti Apa was, oh, there's going to be a floodgate of applications from Māori. We're going to have Māori getting ownership rights recognised in the takutai moana. And they saw that as a threat, so they responded.
This decision caused quite a stir across the road at Parliament, so they created legislation that would become the Foreshore and Seabed Act.
Good morning all, how are you?
Well, it was the Labour government at the time, and how they responded was that they introduced a policy, and the policy said, we're going to stop Māori from being able to go to the Māori Land Court. And the way that we're going to do that is we are going to own the foreshore and seabed ourselves. So they introduced a policy which would vest complete ownership of the foreshore and seabed in the Crown, and then the Crown would become the owner, and the question of whether Māori owned it would be determined and clarified by that law, and that law would say, no, you don't own it. It was a full-scale sweep all ownership rights which were available to Māori following Ngāti Apa, should they go to the court to have those rights determined, gone.
Our position has always been to try to balance two objectives: the general public's right of access and use of foreshore seabed areas, and secondly, to uphold and protect Māori customary interests. And we think we've got a good balance. I don't say it will please either extreme of the debate, but it doesn't set out to.
You won't be asserting Crown ownership?
What I have said from day one is that there will need to be clarifying legislation, and today's proposal will set out what the nature of that would be.
What's your assessment of the political impact on this, of all the things your government faces? How big a deal is this, actually?
Actually, not as big as many of the headlines would suggest. Some of the sub-editors think it is. I think it's one of a number of issues swirling around out there. People expect the government to find a solution to it, but I don't think it's the first thing people are talking about over the coffee cups.
Maybe not in the beehive, but elsewhere in the highest reaches of Māori academia and law, the jug was boiling.
The legislation is a confiscation of things which the treaty says belong to Māori under the full, exclusive and undisturbed possession of our whenua. It's a confiscation of things which the common law recognises as part of our Aboriginal title. And it's a confiscation of things that under human rights norms are internationally recognised as belonging to Indigenous peoples. It's an unjust and unfair piece of legislation.
I was shocked. But you know what? That fundamentally told, or certainly myself, and I know some others, that here's still this group of people that if they're challenged in regard to the ownership of land, they still wanted to assert their rights, Crown rights, in regard to the ownership of the seabed and foreshore.
There was a sense that by denying the opportunity to even take it to court, it was just straight theft. You know, no opportunity to challenge, to see whether or not what the Crown was saying was right. It was just a real insult. I started hearing, you know, some serious kōrero from people that they were going to block beaches, going to burn down ministry, and then egg and fish and all of that kind of stuff at that time. It became clear that we needed to do something.
Mai pari tū ki turaki rai. O te iwi o tōku kuia o ngā tika hungunu, he iwi noho tahatai. I te kitenga i ngā huatanga e pāna ki a ngā tiapa i te tonga, o ngā tika hungunu tētahi ki te tuatahi atu, i ngā riporiponga o te pire takutai moana, ka mutu i ka kama te whakarite kia rite.
People came to the conclusion really fast that we were all going to lose. There were no winners in this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't going to be any good for any of us. We were all going to get smashed over. And I think when Māoridom collectively, when we're going to all get smashed over and no one is going to be left out, we unite really, really well.
It just sparked up memories of the original land losses. We were very prepared to stand up and be counted.
I think part of it too was the way that Helen Clark did it. It was very underhanded, it was very uncompromising, no holds barred. She just came in and said, this is what we're going to do. And despite the objection all over the country, well, there was no gentleness about her. She just went in and kind of, I'm just going to cut your throats.
We weren't afraid of political upheaval. And then we reached out to Moana and Miriana and Miri and Tanga. We said, what should we do about it? And they all said the same thing. I said, we're thinking about a Hīkoi. They said, Hīkois went out with the ark.
I tau te rā, ko te tuaono haratua 2,000 māwhā ka pānui tia te pire. Tōna toru wiki nei katatū. Conversations went from regional to national. It became urgent.
This has been very much pushed by our whanaunga from Ngāti Kahungunu, who said, we're marching. They'd already decided that they were fed up and they were going to march. That word just spread around the country and then ended up with us. I rang around people and organised a national conference call, and it's on. It was just a sense that if we could get the right people engaged, and I'm talking movement people, nothing else, just our people, the word would spread naturally anyway, because people wanted to do something. So it wasn't going to be that hard. So, well, if we have to be at Parliament on May the 5th, that means we have to be in Wellington on May the 4th, the night of May the 4th. If we're in Wellington on the night of May the 4th, where do we come from for the night of May the 3rd? Otaki, Daukawa. And then from there, work my way all the way back up home to Te Rerenga Wairua.
Nai harai te mea he tau hau te Māori, ki tēnei mea te Hīkoi. He tau whetū te kau mārima tīmata mai ai te Hīkoi whenua i konei i te hāpua, he mea arahi, e te kuia i te kahurangi, e whina kupa. Ko tērā hunga toko mahai whai wāhia tuki te Hīkoi tōna toru te kau tau tōmu atu, tai ki te rerenga wairua i te atao te rua te kaumārua o Paenga Whāwhā. O ngā kuia me ngā koroua, e rite ana ki te whawhai anō.
Morena.
Wow. The morning we started, you know, we had all of our kaumātua and kuia up there. Make you want to cry, the number of them that were there. You knew we were doing the right thing. Often when you march, you don't get that kind of support. Actually, always when you march, you don't get that level of support, but this time it was there, and you knew right from that day, from that minute, that, that people were behind us.
Much to my great sadness and great disappointment, I find myself having to do what my ancestors were doing, fighting to try and stop people stealing land from us.
They haven't got the power higher than the one above us, and they will never gain what they're trying to do to the Māori people.
Te rerenga wairua. He wāhi e mea ana te toko maha ko te hūpeketanga whakamutunga o te hunga Guariro. E rangona ana te kahu o tua whakarere. Ka maharake ki te momo pēnei a Moana Jackson, peti te whai harawira. I parai te huarahi, mo ngā reanga e pihi ake nei. I feel more empowered than ever to tell this story.
What I knew was that the initial arguments of having the judicial process overturned through a political decision was something that had caused a lot of offence to the people in Ngāti Apa, but also to those Māori lawyers and academics who were observing the situation and asking themselves, well, what are the broader ramifications? And then, you know, of course, Māori politicians and the political discourse started to take shape as well.
Traditionally, Labour had the Māori vote. In 2004, they held all 7 Māori seats. So the bill confronted them with a difficult choice: party or people.
Dr. Cullen, how worried are you that your Māori MPs won't support your legislation?
We are in continued discussions with our Māori MPs, and we've had a lot of useful discussion going on.
Some talk of crossing the floor even. Are you confident that the Māori element is going to vote with the government on them?
I believe that we will have the numbers in Parliament for the proposals that we will be putting forward next Wednesday, and that we will have a lot of people recognising that this is the only sensible way forward.
What were those early initial conversations like?
Heated and tense. And, well, without divulging things that happened within your caucus, you can imagine that you had Māori members representing Māori electorates
who were getting opinions back from their own rohe, and iwi from their own rohe were saying, hey, why is this happening?
You made any decision whether to support it yourself?
Oh, I'm taking advice from my electorate.
Would crossing the floor warrant you handing in your ministerial warrant?
Well, that remains to be seen.
I really don't have anything to say about it.
I felt outraged to have been part of a government that was prepared to do that to us. I was hurt. I was angry. I felt really sad for our people.
So these weren't pleasant conversations, they weren't easy. There was table thumping and tears. There were some pretty straight up, stern, straight talking words spoken. And through all of that, I would have to say that in my mind, I knew then that this was an issue significant enough that it would really impact on the way that we saw ourselves as a people, as a nation.
I reira hiri ki e te tīmatanga o te Hīkoi. Pēnei I ahau nei, ka toi anō I hoatu, me te kore mōhio ki te hohonu o te kaupapa nei.
Just got to bait you up and then we're ready to go.
Bye, bro. I don't want to get my hands dirty, so...
Yeah, bro, all fit to go. You got the hand line today.
Flash one, eh?
And I got the real rod.
Whānosties. Come on. So, bro, 20 years ago, you would have been 10?
Yes.
About 10?
10.
And you were part of the Hīkoi from the very beginning, eh?
From the very beginning, bro.
Did you know at the time how significant that kaupapa was going to be?
Not really. Wasn't until we got into ahipara and then we just started seeing the hundreds and hundreds of people joining the kaupapa. It was actually meant to be the end for me and Kahi at the Te Ahu Centre in Kaitaia. And we ended up in Wellington.
Wow, really?
My parents were furious. But now we were looked after really well by a cop, Matua Rick Few, who's no longer with us. And yeah, it was very cool. Yeah, riding in the police car everywhere. And we started learning a haka. He Tai Timu, and that was a haka that was composed on the Hīkoi by our kaumātua.
Do you still remember that, haka?
Definitely, bro. Well, they go, he tai timu, he tai pādi, e te kāretau, o te kawana, ko wai koe, hei aha tau, taka takahia te tapu, o te takutai. O te moana, o tangaroa e. Ina, ana, koiara. Ina, ana, koiara hi.
It's important to understand the political landscape of the time. The Foreshore and Seabed wasn't the only challenge or obstacle. National had a new leader, Labour was slipping in the polls.
National was in rebuild, and in rebuild simply meant that it had to stand for something far more vigorous, and that's what Brash brought to the game.
None of us was around at the time of the New Zealand Wars. None of us had anything to do with the confiscations. There is a limit to how much any generation can apologise for the sins of its great-grandparents.
Ko te tautokona o Don Brash me te pāti Nāhinara I whana ike nei. In a poll in February after that speech, National pulled ahead of Labour for the first time.
Dr. Brash is with me. Good morning.
Good morning.
What do you say to people who accuse you now of Māori bashing?
Well, I say to them, how can you possibly accuse me of Maori bashing when what I'm saying is I want all New Zealanders, Maori, non-Maori, to be treated equally. That can hardly be Maori bashing.
Well, Dr. Brash, New Zealand is perceived as having such a harmonious society. Surely it's a bit of a stretch to say that this country is racially divided.
I think we're moving down a racially divided track. We've got more and more laws in New Zealand which give special preferences or special status to Maori New Zealanders, and I think that's a very dangerous direction.
This rhetoric of Māori elitism and special privilege struck a chord with a growing number of Pākehā, but to Māori, it was untrue and deeply offensive. This has been a really challenging story to tell because on one hand, I'm a journalist and I want to be completely unbiased. On the other hand, I'm Māori. And what happened back in 2004 still affects me and my people to this day. There's this tuki within me. Ka pō nā hau I te mā noiho tā tātou aro ki te porotiki, me te korei aro ki tā te Māori. Politics is a numbers game. Prime Minister Helen Clark was countering the growing support for Don Brash and the National Party. Passing this bill was a must.
Well, I don't know,
But she couldn't rely on her Māori caucus. So she looked to Winston Peters in New Zealand First, who had the votes to give her a majority.
What ultimately happened, though, was we were overcalled. Winston Peters had 13 votes. He gave Clark confidence that he could overrule the 6 or 7 Māori MPs. So once the real politics of that are that she was able to play us off. And so what we had to do at that moment in time was either walk or salvage the best possible deal so we could fight for another day. That's the pragmatism of politics.
The political judgment at the highest level had already been made, and we were in a position where we had to accept a political judgment, a captain's call, and then deal with the process, which is what we did. It was a challenging time because we then had to ask ourselves as Māori electorate MPs, how were we going to mitigate the most harmful aspects of where this legislation could take us. And, you know, in hindsight, which is always a great thing, you start to wonder whether there should have been just a blanket no from all the Māori MPs right at the beginning to even getting the legislation into the House.
I te taenga o te Hīkoi ki Tāmaki, ka mātau haere te tangata. Kaua ko ngā kaitōranga pū me te iwi mātauranga nui anahi. I mārama te hunga rangatahi me te hunga pakeke ki ngā take o te wā. Ko te kianga nei Māori Seabed Foreshore, I horapa ki te motu whānui, ka mutu ko te āhua o te kara, kei te kitea tonutia I taku hinengaro I tēnei rā.
Ara I te mea nā mātou anake, tēnei kaupapa nā te motu whānui. Te ao Māori. Ai. E hanga ana tērā kia kite te ao, hako ko waikoe, me naka uru mai koe ki roto I tēnei o ngāpuna, kei reira te kaupapa. Kore ware te.
With numbers having reached 5,000 on the main Hīkoi, organisers were met with their biggest obstacle yet.
I think we only found out the night before that it was going to be approved. In fact, we decided we were going to march the bridge anyway, eh?
How are you feeling today? Excited, exhilarated, but really brassed off. But 30 years later, we have to do the same thing that we were doing then against the same government. But this time it's a little bit different because New Zealand First has decided to join with the thieves and steal our land.
I te wāka te a mātou mata, ka waihotea, rātou tēnei kaupapa kia mātou. Ka tīmata mātou I nai nei.
So how does it feel to see all these people here?
Absolutely wonderful. This is about the anger of Māori and the determination that we're going to save our takutai whenua for our mokopuna.
I was on the Harbour Bridge. That was a fantastic moment. You could feel the bridge swaying, moving. The power of our people being able to walk across this bridge, and I thought, wow.
I do not mahi ta mahi, ma titaki mata ki te rata. So kai te pai tonu te haere, te pai tonu te mahi, pai mari.
I eke ki te rua haora kia whakawhiti haumaru nei te hīkoi ki tērā tahao te piriti.
Wali Haumaha had a lot to do with that whole police liaison. I think our march didn't have a lot of arrests because of the involvement of Māori iwi liaison policemen.
The crossing of the bridge was ambitious, but an incredible success. I ko nā ka paua te hīkoi ki te pito ngā kaupapa kōrero putano I te motu.
It's significant because one doesn't like to hold up traffic because you know that there could be all kinds of emergencies, but somebody losing a couple of hours in traffic, to us losing all our moana, big difference. So, it was little in comparison to what we lost.
We're here today to show the whole world shame to the coalition government. What they intended to do is to rip off 30 million acres of the sand and out of the sea and the shores.
I te whanaketanga o ngā tamatoa, ko whakamahia e tameiti o na whakaaro auaha ki te tō mai te aro ki ngā take Māori. Hei te pēhea.
Hei te pai hua.
Ka pai.
Nau mai hara mai hua.
Tēnā koe. Kūaroa nei koe e tohe ana I te tohe nui.
Ai, ai.
E pakanga ana I te pakanga nui.
Ai.
Mo ngā kaupapa huhua, mo ngā kaupapa Māori.
Ai, 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 ai.
Hea ki a koe te hua o te hīkoi, hea ki a koe te hua o te whakatumatuma.
Ko tērā he whakauho o wairua tērā, o te whakatumatuma, o te hine naro tērā. Enari kia hāngai tunu runa I te ara o Orona. Te ara o tū ki te ara o Orona. Kia kore rawa tātou taka pore atu ki roto I te pō kene kene. Enari kia hāngai tunu tātai runa I te pono I te tika o te kaupapa I hīkoi ai e tātou. Kaua rawa e koti atu e tahi kaupapa nā atu.
Do you think activism is important then?
Totally. Ka kore ka hemo koe. Ka moe koe, ka takahia koe. Because if you don't, well, then you allow it to happen. And in the next generation, we'll be talking about tērā kore take hoki o era, and it's fun too. They gotta have fun. Life is theatrical. And then so you have to respond to many become Shakespeare. So we'll be spitting on the ground, do the pūkana, take your pants off, do the whakapūhane. That's all part of the theatre.
Yeah, the theatrics of it.
And so, there are many elements to it. So I'm pretty good at that.
Mea mai koe he old school koutou. He au whakaro ki te new school, ki te anamata, ki te āpopo, o te hunga e whai ana I o tapuai.
E hoa kai au toko mokopuna. Tupua ke rātai mai te kohanga reo I te kura kaupapa. Tēnei te rea nā, re ke no atu. Tēnei te tira hau e haere mai nei te kōrero.
Oi wai mari e, mātou, taku reanga ngā.
Ai.
I a koutou.
Ai.
Me te tohe nui, I tohea e koutou. As the Hīkoi gained momentum, more and more people joined, but that brought with it its own logistical challenges. Keeping people fed, housed and safe on the roads was a real challenge. Keeping in mind too, they had to get everyone to Wellington by the 5th of May.
I takahia e te Hīkoi tōna 80 kiromita I te rā. Ka taua tūrātau ki ia rohe he marae ōna, ka whāngaia, ka whakaruruhautia rātau. Taumata manaakitanga. On April 27th, Tariana Tūria sought wisdom from her people. The pull to stand against the bill was undeniable. Her constituency held their position. She should vote against the bill.
Can we have a quick word with you about Crown ownership then of the seabed and foreshore?
We haven't got there yet.
They were furious with me. Michael and Helen would ring me in the middle of the night to come down to Parliament, and I always took my daughter with me. I didn't want to put anyone else in the situation of having to defend us. So I used to take my daughter, and she couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe that they would do what they were doing.
She'd entertained abstaining from the vote. That at the beginning of the year, that had been her initial thought. She could just abstain. But as she reflected on that, she thought that's not an option she wanted to take. She'd been sent to Parliament to do the business for the people, and abstaining seemed to her a weak action. She was told she could take sick leave. She was told she could be out of the house on another appointment. That she could, and then they finally reached that she could not vote for the bill.
I'd had this dream, and I shared it with Archie Tyrrell, my cousin. And I told him that I was at the mouth of our river, and that a wave came up at the mouth, and on that wave were all the faces of our tūpuna. And he said to me, "What did you think when you saw them?" And I said, well, I knew I had to do it. I knew that I couldn't step back and pretend that it was okay, because it wasn't.
When I first entered Parliament in 1996, I came in for our people. I did not enter politics for a house or a car. I was driven by the call of our people to respond to their needs and aspirations and their rights as Indigenous peoples of this nation.
While these conversations were going on inside Parliament, the Hīkoi continued. News of Tariana's stance emboldened those frustrated by the government's actions.
And I admire her strength, her courage, her mana. Good on you, Auntie Tari, we stand behind you.
He mahi rangatira tērā, nā tērā mārei kura o te ao Māori, te wahine tō o te ao Māori. Kei te tino mihi atu ki aia mo tana kaha, mo tana miharo ki te kaupapa, ki tana iwi, ki tana motuhake hoki.
You were sacked straight away. You are no longer a cabinet minister.
That's right.
How did you get the notice of being sacked?
I got it through the media.
Oh. This is a government also which has been poleaxed by that Court of Appeal decision, and it's a government that's given every impression of bending over backwards to accommodate not only you, but the Māori people. What about the democratic right of all of us now who live in this country to go to the foreshore and the seabed and to make use of it? Why do Māori have a special right? Where is it written Māori have a special right over the foreshore and the seabed?
Well, I think that what the Court of Appeal found was that the right had in fact not been extinguished. And so what it said was that our people had the right to go to the Māori Land Court, in fact, to check out whether they still had those property rights. And my personal viewpoint is that is the right of any New Zealander when we are talking about property rights. No one's private property rights are being affected by this bill, only Māori people.
That's assuming that Māori have a property right there. But anyway...
Well, we should have been allowed to explore that in the court.
I was lonely, and if I'm telling the truth, I was miserable. But it didn't take... I grew up in a family where you either did the right thing or you didn't. And if you didn't do the right thing, you had to own up to it.
I think she's the most inspirational person I've ever met for being able to truly stand up for her ideals at tremendous cost. Loss of friendships, hostility on a public sphere, constant barraging, harassment to do what the labour machinery wanted her to do.
He nui ngā Māori te whakaaro e, kore rawa ngā take Māori, whai mana nui I ngā pāti tōranga pūmatua. They needed an independent voice that would better understand them and advocate better for them. Tariana's decision forced action.
Oh, tēnā te hara mai. Taki noho.
I kōrero hea te take o te haere ki te whare pāremata I mua o te Hīkoi, I hui tahi mātou ki te kāinga o Tuaiva Ricard. Mātou katoa, I whakakauhia katoa tia ki runga o whaingaroa ki reira kōrero ai. Tuatai mo te Hīkoi, tuarua mo te whakatūnga o tētai rōpū I te mea ko puta mai tērā kōrero, ko rongo ngā taringa te hiehia e tai ki te whakaara ki tērā kaupapa. Ka mutu I whakakotahi mai, mātou ki muri aia, me te kore paku mōhio. Te uaua, nā piki mea heke o te mahi tōrangapū. Engari, I tautoko I aia, nā rungi te tika o te kaupapa, me te whakarohake. Mena ko tahi ana ke te wahine. Māori nei, ka puta I ana kāhui Māori, a reipa. Mo tēnei kaupapa, hea te take kei reira tonu e rā Māori e noho ana. Noire, me ki I tai ki te wā, I tērā wā, ki whakaara ki tērā whakaaro, ki te tautoko I a Tariana, I te mea, ko tāna, ko te whakawhiti, ka puta I te reipa, ka puta ki hea.
Shrek the sheep getting a full Prime Ministerial welcome at Parliament today. While Helen Clark happy to roll out the welcome mat for the world-famous Merino, when it came to the Hīkoi, also heading for Parliament steps, it was more a matter of bar humbug.
What it is the same old faces, the Ken Mears, the Harawira families, the Annette Sykes, the haters and wreckers, the people who destroy Waitangi every year, now wanting to do a Waitangi in every town in New Zealand on the way to Wellington, where they'll do a Waitangi on the front steps of Parliament. Is this not what New Zealand has got absolutely sick and tired of?
Of course, as you know, we know, when you start challenging your leadership, etc., like that, and, you know, and we have a very strong support base beside us, well, that's only going to encourage more of our people and our community to say, all right, you want to take on them, that's what you want to call them, we're going to be there with them to challenge you on this kaupapa.
Why would you have the time to go and meet Shrek the sheep, but you wouldn't take the time to talk to a group of New Zealanders concerned about what's happening?
I thought Shrek was good company.
While this was happening, people arrived by busload to Ōtaki, ready to enter the capital.
We got invited down to a meeting of all of the police inspectors from all around the country had been called into Wellington. Found out where the police were going to send us, and it was backstreet shit, eh? as off the road as possible. So when we went up to see the inspectors, bling, 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 all around the room. And me and a couple of others. I said, well, we have this organised, and they had it all up on one. And we'll be going here, and we'll be going here, we'll be going here. Wait till we finish. I said, we're not going to do any of that, mate. I said, what? I said, no, we're not going to gather in that bloody pig hole that you got us gathering in. No way. I've got kaumātua and kuia, I've got kids, I've got all kinds of people. We will gather where it's safe. We're going to gather in the car park and out the front and underneath the shelter of Te Papa. That's where we're going to gather. All of these inspectors started looking at me. I says, hey, look, I don't know whether you fellas know this, but I've already cleared this with Wally Homaha. All these cops turned to look at Wally, because I hadn't, of course. And then Wally goes, yes, we've already discussed this. And so they all had to cave, eh? What he can do in 50,000 turn up.
This is the last leg of our Hīkoi when we started from the north 10 days ago. And I have to say that we've been incident-free right up until this point.
Why are you not at school?
My teacher says that I'm allowed here, and I'm just here with my mum and Māori Women's Welfare League.
I remember 20 years ago being here, and this place was packed, standing room only. There were flags, banners, people chanting. There was power in the movement, and there was definitely a feeling of injustice, but I never felt unsafe. And that's something that I'll always remember, is there was this wairua, ko tahitanga.
Rawi.
Yeah.
Yeah, ko tahi te wairua. He maha ngā rōpū a iwi, a hapu I tai, a tinana, a kākahu rereke.
Helen Clark said she wasn't going to come out and talk to you. Can she ignore this?
I think the Prime Minister's decision to ignore the people is never a good decision. This is the people's voice. What else do you want? What part of no don't they understand?
If I was the government, I'd take note. Shit, that's enough people to show you that people didn't like what you were planning.
What's happened today, it was all quite unnecessary, but since it has happened, listen to it. It's just amazing. The kotahitanga of the tribes of New Zealand is undeniable here.
I ask all of you bureaucrats watching today, how can you allow this to happen in the 21st century?
In only a few months, these Māori leaders, the H'ers and Rekas, were able to coordinate the biggest social movement this country has seen, safely and peacefully.
But you're in awe, hey? You know, when you see thousands of our people, tens of thousands of our people, you think, wow, you know, it's wonderful in one sense, but sad in another sense that people are not seeing the obvious, that you just can't behave and do this towards us, thieve our lands.
It was huge. For me, it's always about helping our people believe that they can be anything they want to be. You know, that they don't have to sit back and be told what to do, that if they don't like it, they should stand up.
E mahara anau ki tau ara, pango katoa te papa nei. Haruru pai te papa nei, ko nei ke te mahi a te tangata. And I remember the Labour MP sitting here, Parekura, John Tamihere, etc., and it was here, very poetically, that Buckets of sand were placed at their feet. And I also remember the guy who climbed the Seddon statue here and put a tino rangatiratanga flag in his hands. The whole place just erupted. As thousands arrived at her doorstep, the Prime Minister and her ministers watched from above.
You were never tempted to head out there yourself today?
No. Are you upset that so many Māori are here opposing your policies today?
People are exercising their rights in a free and open society, and I applaud that.
There was talk of us boycotting, just not going down. Well, that ain't our style. We're obliged to go down there and face our people. So that's what we did. Of course it faces you. The key is how resilient you are to these sorts of confrontations.
The weight of people's emotions was palpable. That's what you could feel, because you had young and old turn up to Parliament. And you knew yourself that looking out there, this is something momentous.
E te ui, kia mau, kia mau, kia mau. Anei te kōrero.
Ka whare, anei te whakautu. Anna. Anei. Anna. Ka tuha, whakamutina. Po, whakahuama. Yeah!
We need heroes, live ones. Our young people need to see that, you know, somebody is going to stand up for what's right rather than just roll over with the punches.
And on that day, she was able to see that the whole of Māori was with her, in fact.
It is not acceptable to compare our people to sheep. It is not acceptable to call us haters and wreckers.
I was ashamed of myself for going with Labor, for believing at that time our people were pro-Labor, and I felt really ashamed of myself that I never saw the ngangara amongst them.
It's about time we realised they are exactly the same as National. No different. It's about time we started looking to a new future. We have to look to people like Tariana, who have the courage to say to these people in here, you can't push me around, I have my people behind me. To people like Nanaya, who's able to say, Tainui stands behind me, I don't need my mana from here. I just wish some of the brothers had the balls to do something like that. So you go back and you think about how we're going to address this issue. Let the Foreshore and Seabed issue be the way in which we've been able to come together. Let our independent future be the way in which we move past it.
Te tuaono haratua, ko tahira I muri te tatunga o te Hīkoi ki te whare pāremata, ka uru te pire ki te whare.
So this is an issue which has challenged our sense of nationhood and our ability to encompass all the interests in our country.
And we said to ourselves, no, we're not going to waka jump because we will betray and desert our people in time of need.
If the Foreshore and Seabed Bill is a glimpse of how Māori customary property rights are to be treated by the government, then we will see the tide of Māori opinion turn as sure as night becomes day. To ensure that the government is accountable, I will not resign. And the government will need to work hard to retain the confidence of my electorate and strengthen their relationship with Tainui Waka.
Readings from the speeches made that day show quite clearly where people stood on the issue. Nanaia Mahuta opposed the bill, whereas Mitariri Nui supported the bill but gave his 5 minutes of speech time to Tariana Turia so that she could deliver a speech. It was a right taken away from her when she became an independent member of Parliament.
One vote opposed.
1 vote opposed.
The ayes are 65, the noes are 55. The bill will be read a first time.
Despite a hīkoi of tens of thousands of people showing their opposition to the bill, on the 18th of November, it passed its third reading, 65 to 53. Nanaia Mahuta, who voted against the bill in its first 2 readings, voted for it in the third.
When Tariana crossed the floor to leave the party, which actually on the back of the Hīkoi then led to the establishment of the Māori Party, I was in another position where I said, well, do I do that? Which I didn't think that was the way that I should go. The prospect of a Māori Party resolving what was immediately in front of us, I felt, was too distant at the time. So I stayed and I used the process, the best way I knew how, to buffer the negative impact that I could see could be a real harmful outcome for my own electorate. So I just kind of brought everything close and brought it home.
Ko tētahi o ngā hua I puta I te hīkoi, ko te aranga mai o te pāti Māori. He mea arahi tari ana tūria. Te taupō tīwhai muri mai, ka riro I a rātou ngā tūru e whā. Ka mutu, te whāinga matua, he whakakore I te pire taku tau moana.
Ko te kā waratanga, wā te ringa katou, utu a raupatu. Wā te ringa Māui, tahai taku tei moana e. The right hand pays out for last century's confiscations, but the left hand steals more land.
I'm here inspired by those within the Māori activist and protest movement who dared to challenge. I'm here because our people have used the law and every other possible avenue to express our reality and live as Māori. Our tipuna have died in the defence of what was theirs. The blood soaks the land.
I have hope because I refuse to accept defeat. I have hope because even by coming to this house, I know I carry the hopes and expectations of Māoridom to achieve change, and I know that they will be there when the call comes to act.
It is my party's intention to seek this House's support for our private members' bill to repeal this act.
In 2011, the Māori Party did in fact repeal the Foreshore and Seabed Act. It was replaced by the Marine and Coastal Areas Act, which all parties agree still fails to deal with the underlying issues. Who owns the foreshore and seabed? History is tides. You think you've moved on, then you're swept back. In 2023, our election campaign was full of language that reminded me of that election back in 2005. And now, the Māori Health Authority, gone. Ngā ingoa Māori ngā tari o te kāwanatanga o whakahekea ki raro iho, putu ai. And with the Treaty Principles Bill, is the treaty itself even under attack? And the Māori response to this? Well, we've done exactly what we did 20 years ago. Come together.
Whoever said we're getting rid of the Treaty of Waitangi? Tell me. No, we didn't. You tell me whoever said we're getting rid of the Treaty of Waitangi. So stop the crap. Stop the nonsense. Stop the hysteria. Some of us were out there before you were born fighting for Maori land rights. Let me tell you, sunshine, it's not the way it's going to be in 2040. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're off now. You're about
These debates about our identity and who we are as a nation and the rights of every single person, whether they've been here for 1,000 years or whether they just got here on an aeroplane this morning. Those debates will continue. Our treaty will have partnership, not just for some people, but for all.
There's no surprise to me in regard to how some individuals, call them politicians, feel emboldened to race bait. You scratch the surface of a racist, bang. And how do you do that? You challenge their being in regard to their reliance on a corrupt system. It's always been there. I mean, people say, oh gosh, I'm surprised. You know, I'm not surprised.
One of the things that strikes me is 20 years ago there was anti-Māori rhetoric. It was scare tactics, essentially to appease the right. And we're seeing that again almost 20 years later. And it's really frustrating because I thought we had grown a lot more as a country. But that's why I really wanted to be here at Waitangi, to feel that unity again. And you can feel it. It's electric. And it's a wairua that I haven't felt since I was a 10-year-old boy on Lambton Quay walking with thousands of other Māori.
Hei tā e tahi I hua kore te hīkoi. Engari mō kuake me te huhua o tōku reanga. Nā tēnei kaupapa I pupu akea I te mārama ki ngā take tōranga pū, te hiahia ki te tohe, te hiahia ki te wero I te karauna. It saw the rise of a new generation of political leaders. I see many of my generation who are now taking this fight into their own hands. We are more aware than ever. We are better equipped with our language and our tikanga. We understand the system, and every barrier we're met with is another opportunity for us to grow stronger.
We have a responsibility to challenge the system. If we believe in the health and well-being of our environment and the health and well-being of our future generations, and we do believe that.
Every generation has their own world to live in. In ngā tamatoa days, there was nobody you could rely on to carry that. In the Hīkoi taku time on the day of the land march, the same thing was of that time. In the Bastion, Point Raglan and other of the big occupations, they were of the time. Ours was te taku taimona. I mean, the next generation might be the referendum, who knows? But they will know that there's a history within themselves and within their people to not accept it just because somebody tells you it must be so.
We will not allow. We will not allow them to determine what the future of our tamariki and rangatahi should be. No way. That is something that would probably press the wrong buttons in me.